I think what you're asking is it the same event or is it two different events?
Not the question, but do you mind if I clarify?
Yeah, please.
Okay. I believe Mr. Lawrence asked you that basically everything was the same, and was there any difference as to the version of events when Mr. Riley and Mr. Leverett left? And I believe your response, correct me if I'm wrong, was, well, there's the one event that Mr. Ray Greenlaw gives that the machete incident occurs and then they leave,
Right.
and then he gives a different account where the machete incident occurs and then it takes the firing of the gun to get them to leave. So is that the same? So is it a different event, or is it?
I think you're confusing. Ray, you're correct in your first statement as far as Ray saying the first event was with the machete and he struck Mr. Riley, and that's when the two of them took off. The second version is when Wayne Greenlaw comes out of the house with a rifle, and they took off at the sight of the rifle, and Wayne Greenlaw fired off some warning shots as they're fleeing.
And your understanding of the facts of the case are that there was only one round of warning shots, whether that be 2 or 3.
That's my understanding, yes.
Your understanding of the facts of the case and what witnesses have testified to is that there was not a first round of warning shots and then a second round of warning shots. Is that correct?
There has to be a first round.
Well, that there was only one round, period.
Correct.
Okay. Now, you had also mentioned that you weren't sure about who invited, and well, let me just say, I mean, obviously you weren't there at the event, none of the law enforcement officers were there for this entire event. We're all relying on other lay witnesses' testimony to try to piece this back together, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the last point that I want to kind of go over with you is that you were asked about the how on the first visit Mr. Riley and Mr. Leverett were led into the house, and you said that you believed, but you weren't sure, but you believed that Ray thought that Wayne let them in, and Wayne said that they just walked in. Would you mind? Is it true that you don't remember how that?
No, I think both of them were confused as far as how they got in the house. I believe Wayne said that they walked in. I think, from what I recall, Ray had said that they knocked on the door.
And who let them in?
Ray wasn't sure if he let them in or if Wayne had let them in.
Okay, would you mind, would you mind turning to page 7 of the transcript? Of Ray? Of the, I'm sorry, yes, this is Ray Greenlaw's, page 7 of Ray Greenlaw's transcript.
I'm sorry, which one did you say?
Page 7, please.
Okay.
And starting at line 20, if you could just read that to yourself and read through line 25.
Line 20 starts with his investigator leading. Says, were they invited in the house? Ray says, yes, they were, but investigator Lee says, by who? Ray says, my brother. Investigator Lee says, okay.
Okay. So Ray thinks that his brother let the Mr. Riley and Mr. Leverett in the house, right?
Yes.
Okay, and it is Mr. Wayne Greenlaw's house that Mr. Ray Greenlaw is just staying at for a couple of weeks. So that kind of makes sense if somebody just shows up that maybe they know the actual owner of the house, right?
Correct. And I believe Ray said he assumed that they were friends with the Waynes.
Okay. And so that understanding kind of, I mean, that's understandable.
Yes.
Great. Okay. And also, obviously, then, if Wayne didn't let him in the house, to him, it's probably understandable that that his understanding was that they just walked in. Isn't that right?
Sure.
May I have just a moment, Governor? Other questions?
Are you ready, Mr. Wells?
Just real quickly. Investigator Ford, there are a lot of witnesses in this case, right?
Yes.
And some of them have had a lot to drink.
Yes.
I mean, a lot, like a lot to drink.
Everybody directly involved with the Greenlaw house, yes.
So it's pretty hard to know exactly what happened, right?
To some extent.
There are some facts that I think everybody can agree upon, but then some that who knows what happened.
Correct.
But the truth is, it doesn't really matter what happened a whole lot, right? I mean, what we're here to decide, what you were looking at in the interviews is what the two defendants were thinking.
Correct.
And the only person that can tell us what Ray Greenlaw was thinking when he did this is Ray Greenlaw.
Correct.
And the only person who can tell us what Wayne Greenlaw was thinking when he did this was Wayne Greenlaw.
Correct.
Objection, Your Honor. I believe that is, I think we'll maybe the argument outside the presence of the jury.
You may. Jury. Clerk. Mr. Hunt?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm just concerned that this line of questioning is going to get the officer to, or elicit some sort of response that suggests that the only way that you can determine an individual's state of mind is by what they say and not taking into account other evidence in the case. That's my concern, is that this line of questioning is eliciting that type of response. State of mind is obviously hard to determine. Your state of mind can be determined, as Mr. Will is well aware, by other circumstantial evidence. It does not require direct evidence of a person's state. And so, for that reason, we're objecting to it just being an unfair question. And unless there's a cautionary instruction given that statements by an individual would be direct evidence of an individual's state of mind, but the jury should also consider all other evidence, including circumstantial evidence, in their determination of the fact of issue, which one is the defendant's state of mind. So not just their statements, but other circumstantial evidence as well.
Mr. Will?
It sounded an awful lot like an objection about something that I haven't done.
It's just a question. I had it.
You got it.
I did have it before the objection got typed. Yes.
And the only person who can tell us what Ray Greenlaw was thinking when he did this is Ray Greenlaw. Answer correct. Question, the only person who can tell us what Wayne Greenlaw was thinking when he did this is Wayne Greenlaw.
Mr. Will? Sounds like what he's objecting to.
Judge, I asked who can tell us what they were thinking, and the only answer is the person who was thinking it. He's talking about getting into all sorts of other evidence, and that it's more reliable and less reliable, and a whole bunch of nonsense that didn't happen here in this courtroom.
Mr. Hunt?
I understand, Your Honor, that yes, that they're the only person who can tell us what they're thinking is the person who's thinking it. I understand that. I just think that's a little bit, that it's clearly other evidence available to determine a person's state of mind other than that. And I don't know how to get that out to the jury in this line of questioning without cautionary instruction being given. Just because, I mean, it's a powerful question, but I think it's also kind of a misleading question as well, because there are other ways to determine an individual's state of mind.
Well, isn't that something that can either be addressed on a closing argument and or a jury instruction? I mean, the question, the
Well-
answer that he's attempting to elicit, he answered correct. I mean, there's nothing other than that as an answer.
Okay, well, in addition, we request one of two things, either to allow a recross on the fact that there's other evidence of state of mind other than what the individual says, or we'd also object.
How does this witness know that?
That's what I understand.
He's not a legal
I
scholar.
understand that that's the problem. So I guess it would have to be addressed if the objection is overruled. In addition to that objection, we also object that this redirect and that question in particular is outside the scope of cross.
As to that aspect of the objection, being outside the scope. Mr. Will?
We just,
Yeah, 20 minutes is 50 minutes in Mr. Lawrence's book.
we just spent an hour talking about what these guys were saying and what they were thinking. I think that's a fair question to ask as to what they were thinking.
I'll overrule the objection. I think it's appropriate material for closing argument and potentially a jury instruction. When we get to that. But before we bring the jury back in, we need to talk about scheduling.
I have like 3 questions to ask if I can.
No, I understand that. But then we have the medical examiner.
Yes, ma'am.
And I can't imagine there's any way in God's little green earth that we're going to get out of here by 6, and we have to be out of here by 6 today. We cannot go past 6
I
today.
have about 30 minutes to talk right now.
Well, Mr. Lawrence is going to tell me 10, which means 40.
I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it.
Mr. Nappy, can I put the clock up here and have the buzzer go off like they do at the appellate court?
Judge, mine will be, depending on what Mr.
I need to
Mine
know
should be
if you
short.
all can keep it in an hour.
Yes.
I don't know who's asking questions for
It should be.
You're entitled to your full cross-examination, but scheduling is an issue today.
I understand it should be quick on us,
All
right?
right? Okay, let's bring the jury back in.
Actually, Your Honor, just a moment, just one more person. Yeah, actually, they're the only person who can answer what's in somebody's state of mind, other than the defendant, is actually the jury. They're
Again, a perfect topic for a closing argument. There's no question, I agree with you, that that's an appropriate argument for them. But it is still an appropriate question on redirect based on cross. We could let her know they can come back out.
Jury. Jury may be seated.
Everyone else, please. Ladies and gentlemen, before you are escorted out of the courtroom, Mr. Mott made an objection, which I have overruled. Mr. Mott may continue with questioning.
Investigator Ford, you told us some time ago that the reason you conducted an interview was to determine whether or not either of these individuals had a reasonable fear of imminent death or great bodily harm.
Correct.
The only person that can tell you what Ray Greenlaw was thinking at the time of the event is Ray Greenlaw.
Correct.
The only person who can tell you what Wayne Greenlaw was thinking at the time of the event is Wayne Greenlaw.
Correct.
And you gave both of these individuals every single opportunity to explain that they had a reasonable fear of imminent death or great bodily harm.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Can we release Investigator Ford from his subpoena?
Yes, ma'am.
Any objection?
Ma'am.
Any objection from counsel for Ray Greenlaw? All right, Subject to the instruction I gave you earlier about not discussing the case until the trial is over regarding these first State's next witness.
Dr. Tim Gallagher.
Follow me to the podium, please. Would you stop here? Raise your right hand and swear.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you should give this positive the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Please raise your hand.
Witness is seated.
And you may inquire.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Tell us your name, please.
My name is Timothy John Gallagher.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm the Associate Medical Examiner for Volusia and Seminole County.
What does an associate medical examiner for Volusia and Seminole counties do?
We determine the cause of death and the manner of death.
And what types of cases?
In cases of a homicide, suicide, accident, or any unattended medical death.
And that's for both Volusia and Seminole counties, correct?
It is, yes.
How long have you held such a position?
For about 4 years.
And what are your qualifications to hold that position?
After graduating high school, graduated college with a degree in biology and chemistry. After college, I graduated medical school with my medical degree. After getting my medical degree, I went back to graduate school and got a degree in hospital management. After that, I did a training residency in general surgery. After general surgery, I did a training residency in anatomical pathology. After that residency, I did a fellowship in forensic sciences.
Tell us what pathology is.
Pathology is the study of tissue and the diseases that affect it.
And are there subgroups of pathology?
There are subgroups of pathology, yes.
And what are those subgroups of pathology?
There's anatomical pathology, there's clinical pathology, there's forensic pathology.
And are you involved in all three of those?
Yes, I am.
And tell us a little bit about how an autopsy is conducted.
An autopsy is conducted generally in 2 parts. When we receive the body, we examine the external surfaces of the body, and then we look for signs of injury or signs of disease. After we're satisfied with the external examination of the body, we take our medical instruments, and then we open up the body, and then we inspect each organ for signs of disease or injury. And when that's completed, we generate a report, and we list all of our findings and our opinion as to what killed the person and what the circumstances of that death were.
I asked you about the 3 branches of pathology, but I never asked you to define them for us. You told us what they were, but what do they mean and how do you use them? I'm sorry.
Certainly. Anatomical pathology is the study of tissue and the disease. So if you've ever gotten a biopsy, a piece of tissue taken off of you and sent to the doctor, it'll come to me. I'll look under the microscope and determine whether that piece of tissue is normal or if it's infected or it's injured, and then I'll write a report about that. Clinical pathology is if you've ever given blood or any a urine sample to a lab, that is analyzed, and then I will evaluate the report for accuracy and generate my opinion on that sample. Forensic science encompasses both anatomic and clinical pathology, but it also includes injury to the tissue and the effects of injury on the entire human body.
Okay, and then you told us how it is that an autopsy is conducted, and that you use all three of these branches during the course of the autopsy.
That's correct, yes.
Were you involved in were you involved in conducting an autopsy of Brian Leverett on October 31st of 2011?
Yes, I was.
Okay, for a death that occurred on October 29th, 2011.
That's correct.
Tell us please how Mr. Leverett's body came to your office and what condition it was in.
Mr. Leverett came to our office in a sealed body bag. We opened up the body bag, and he was dressed in his clothing, cowboy boots, blue jeans, a shirt. We removed the clothing, and we did the external examination on him.
Is law enforcement present when you conduct your autopsy?
Law enforcement is present when we conduct our autopsy.
In fact, Josh Mott was there on this particular day.
That's correct, yes.
What is the reason that law enforcement is there present during the autopsy?
Law enforcement is there for an information exchange. They give us information about the case, and then we give them information about our findings on the case.
And they also collect evidence during the course of, or collect or retrieve evidence from you during the course of the autopsy, is that correct?
That's correct. I will get evidence from the body that is important to their case, and I will photograph it, catalog it, and then present it to them for their investigation.
And in fact, in this particular case, that did occur.
It did, yes.
You told us a moment ago that there was an external examination conducted upon Brian Leverett before the internal examination began. Is that the typical practice at the medical examiner's office?
Yes, we will do the external examination before the internal examination. That's correct.
And did you find any obvious signs of external trauma to the body of Brian Leverett prior to commencing your internal examination?
We did find signs of trauma on his body, yes.
Okay. Would those signs of trauma be consistent with injuries created by gunshot wounds?
They were, yes.
And in fact, multiple gunshot wounds, is that correct?
Multiple gunshot wounds, that's correct.
When you did your internal examination, did you find injuries on the inside of the body consistent with what you had seen on the outside of the body?
We did, yes.
Doctor, I'd like you to step down and talk with us for a few minutes about some photographs that I'm going to show you. Before we get started on the photographs, there were 4 distinct gunshot wounds that you noticed during your examination, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, could you briefly describe where they were? I'd like to go through them in reverse order and finish with A. But let's talk first about gunshot wound D.
All right, I'm just going to
Sure, yes, please.
Okay, so there were 4 gunshot wounds, and they were labeled A through D. And so we want to start with D first.
Yes, sir.
So D is in the lower right leg, and D struck this way and went into the lower right leg and was able to retrieve the bullet fragment from the lower right leg.
In order to help your testimony, I'm going to show you what the Mark States Exhibit 39 put up on this board and allow you to step down here and explain to the jury what it is we're looking at. Here's the laser pointer, and I think the corporal wants you to stand on this side so you're facing her.
Okay, so I'm going to refer to. There we go. Okay. All right. So I'm going to refer to this picture right over here, and this is the lower lower right-hand corner of the poster board. This leg is his right leg, and then this leg, of course, would be his left leg. And so I'm referring to this wound right over here. This is a gunshot wound. This is an entrance type gunshot wound. and the bullet entered here and traveled down into his leg, and we recovered it at that part of his leg down here.
And I think we see a photograph of that projectile in the upper portion of the bore, is that correct?
This is the portion of the bullet that we recovered from this wound over here.
And this was the first of 4 gunshot wounds.
That's the first of 4 gunshot wounds. Yeah.
When you look at a gunshot wound on a body, are you able to make any determinations about distance or the caliber of the wound, or the caliber of the round that made the wound? What determinations can you make just from looking at the body?
We can make some determinations as to the distance. Can make some determination as to the distance. Generally, gunshot wounds fall in 3 different categories. One is close contact. That's the first category. Second one is kind of a medium length distance between the muzzle of the gun and the victim.
And what's the range on the medium typically?
The medium is typically 3 to 4 feet. All right, so we have contact, we have 3 to 4 feet, and then we have a distance that's greater than 4 feet. Right, we call indeterminate. So we don't know exactly how far it is, but we know it's greater than 4 feet. And the way that we're able to determine that is because when you fire a gun, not only does the bullet come out of the gun, but also the spent gunpowder, all the soot and smoke come out of the gun, and it deposits on the skin. So it makes an impression on the skin, and judging by how much of it is there and what the pattern is, I'm able to determine how close or how far that muzzle was to the skin when it was discharged.
And just so that everybody knows, all 4 of these gunshot wounds were from that indeterminate range, more than 4 feet.
Right, there's no soot deposit, there's no gunpowder around these wounds, so that would give me evidence that these gunshot wounds were from greater than 4 feet away.
What can you tell us about caliber of the round that made the wound? Is there anything that you can see looking at the body?
So you can get a rough estimate of the caliber of the gun used, and if you look in this picture over here, the upper left-hand corner, or even the upper right-hand corner, you can see this measuring device that we use. It's a ruler divided into centimeters, and based on the measurement of the wound against this device, you can determine what the caliber is. You can determine a rough estimation of what the caliber is.
And while we're looking at the upper right photograph, where you've shown the ruler against the body, that's the left thigh on the outside of the victim, is it not?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And so I think in order to talk about the size weapon that made the injury to the right leg, let's first talk about the size of the caliber that made the injury to the left leg.
Okay. We're going to talk about this wound over here that's on his left leg, left upper leg. So we're talking about this part of the body right over here. We can see the red spot on his leg. That's the entrance wound. That's where the bullet entered into the skin. And then we're measuring it with this L-shaped ruler there. So based on the size of that wound against that ruler, I'm able to have a very strong opinion that it is a small caliber projectile that caused that wound.
And that would be consistent with a .223?
Yeah, this size entrance wound is consistent with a .223 caliber round.
And in fact, the exit wound is also indicative of a .223.
The exit wound is indicative of a high-powered or high-velocity projectile consistent with that of a .223.
Which would, a high velocity or high velocity projectile would be fired from something like a rifle as opposed to a handgun.
Yes, and we're talking about the exit wound here.
Okay, let's talk about the exit wound on the bottom.
Okay, well, you compare, sorry, this thing is dying.
Sorry.
I'll just walk over to it and go old school on you guys if that's okay. All right. So here's the entrance wound here. And so you see this is the entrance wound. And look at the size of the exit wound. It's tremendous. You know why is the exit wound so much larger than the entrance wound. Well, you have to remember that this is a shot from a rifle. There's a lot of power behind this. It's a small bullet, but it's extremely powerful. And when it enters the skin, it pushes out everything that's in front of it. So it pushes out all the tissue, all the bone, everything that it touches when it goes in the body, and it forces it out through that hole. It makes that hole go in that way. So that's why, and that's very indicative of a high-powered round shot from a rifle. So you have a very small entrance wound, but a tremendous exit wound. You have a lot of tissue and stuff just wanting to come out of the body through this area over here.
And so you're safe in saying, or confident in saying that the wound to the left thigh was in fact made by a high-powered rifle consistent with a .223 caliber round.
Yeah, I'd say all the evidence in this picture shows me that this was a small caliber .223 round shot from a rifle.
And if you have an opinion with respect to the lower right leg, let's talk about that. Tell us, compare and contrast the differences in the injury that we see in these three photographs.
Well, we've spoken about the size of a .223 round. You know what the size of a .223 round looks like. You know what its entrance wound looks like. But now we have this entrance wound right here. You know, so this entrance wound is larger than that one. So you know that it's made by something other than a .223. All right. So this is at kind of a weird angle. You know, so my opinion on that would be that that is a medium caliber projectile, not consistent with a .223. So if there was another gun involved, that would probably have caused that injury.
There was another gunshot wound to the body of Brian Leverett that can, I think, be described as more of a graze wound. Do you recall an injury such as that you found during your examination?
Okay. Yes, there was another injury. It was a graze wound, and we might be able to see some of it here, actually. Okay, well, you're going to have to use a little bit of your imagination unless you've got like 20/20 vision. But the graze wound was a bullet that had gone between his toes, between his first toe and his second toe. So that it didn't go into the skin, but it grazed both sides of it, and then started at the top and came out the bottom.
So move this over and bring another piece here. Now showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 38. You told us about 3 gunshot wounds to the body. Tell us about the final gunshot wound.
Okay. You can all see this, but this is his back. This is the back of Mr. Leverett. This is the back of his head over here. This is his arm, and then this is his back over here. So we have a gunshot wound that's right over here. Right. So this gunshot wound, this dark spot over there, is an entrance gunshot wound. It's same size as that one. You know, so in my opinion, that's a .223 round. This gunshot wound came at an angle. Kind of came at this angle. Started from here, came that way. It entered his body and caused a lot of damage when it got inside there. Number one, it hit the spinal cord and went right through the spinal cord. It hit the liver, went right through the liver, and hit the kidney, and came out through the ribs and was recovered here. This is an X-ray, and we found it in the soft tissue over here. But here's an X-ray, and this is an X-ray of his chest area. and we see that the bullet is here. So we recovered this portion of the bullet, and it matches up to the x-ray, and there it is there. So small entrance wound, a lot of damage on the inside, consistent again with a .223 round shot from a rifle.
Talk with us, if you will, about the fatality of these 4 injuries, and which injuries would be fatal, and why, and what result these particular gunshot wounds would have on the body.
Okay. The first gunshot wound that we spoke about in the leg over here, it really didn't hit anything major, just muscle and soft tissue. So that would not be considered a fatal gunshot wound. Likewise, the grazed wound between the 2 toes over there, merely a flesh wound, would not be considered fatal at all. The entrance wound to the leg that exited this way had cut a lot of the major arteries and veins that are in the leg, and very severely, where if he did not get immediate medical attention, he would have bled to death very, very quickly. The gunshot wound in the back did go through his spinal cord.
What effect did that have?
Everything below where he was struck with the bullet would not function, meaning he would have no control over his legs, would not be able to walk. Additionally, the bullet, we said, went through the liver and then went through the kidney. Liver bleeds very, very heavily when it's struck, and so does the kidney. They would have been fatal injuries.
Fair to say that both the gunshot wound to the back and to the leg would have caused death?
Yes.
Not immediately, but within a very short time.
Exactly.
Doctor, as part of your analysis and examination, do you do a tox screen on the victim?
The toxicology screen on the blood, yeah.
Okay, and did you do one in this particular case?
We did, yes.
Okay, could you tell us what you found with respect to toxicology?
We drew blood from him and we sent it to our toxicology lab. And when we received the results, it said that his blood was positive for ethanol, which is the alcohol in alcoholic beverages, beer, wine, whiskey, etc.
And to what extent was it in his blood? Can you tell?
His value was .194. Right, was .194, which is about 2.5 times over the legal limit for driving while intoxicated.
How about cocaine? How much cocaine did you find in his blood?
Cocaine, we didn't find any cocaine in his blood.
Did you find any other narcotics in his blood?
Did not, no.
Are these all of the injuries sustained by Brian Leverett, as far as you're aware?
I believe they are, yes.
Good. You can have a seat, Dr. Appreciate it. Doctor, I'm approaching with what's been marked QQ. Do you recognize that document?
I do, yes.
And what do you recognize it to be?
This is a Florida certificate of death.
And did you prepare that document in this particular case?
I did, yes.
Okay, and is that the Florida certificate of death for Brian Leverett?
It is, yes.
And does it list a cause of death?
It does list the cause of death as multiple gunshot wounds.
And you affixed your signature to that?
I did sign it, yes.
Very good, thank you. Judge, if there are no objections, take the move QQ and evidence as stated next.
Any objection?
No objection.
Councilman
I want
Frazier?
to look at it.
Okay.
Any opposed?
Objection is overruled and the exhibit will be admitted as exhibit number 40. State, 41, I'm sorry, this one.
Dr. You testified that the manner of death in this particular case was multiple gunshot wounds.
That's the cause of death,
Excuse me, cause of death. Manner of death was?
a homicide.
Okay. And just remind us, all of the gunshot wounds sustained by Brian Leverett were either to the side or back.
Yes.
He didn't receive any injuries to his front.
No.
And in fact, the round that killed him actually hit him in the spine, right?
That was a fatal round, yes.
Thank you, Doctor.
Counsel for defendant Wayne Greenlaw, Mr. Nappy, cross-examination.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Doctor, I was reviewing your report, and you have it in front of you?
I do, yes.
And I don't know if this is, I'm misreading it or this is an error, but on page 2 of 8, where it talks about gunshot wound D, for direction of projectile, you have it as front to back, left to right, and slightly upward. And I believe you testified on direct examination that it was slightly downward.
Let me have a look there. Oh, yeah, now I'm looking at it, right. Yeah, I did testify that it was slightly downward, my mistake, slightly upward.
So it is slightly upward.
It is, yeah.
Right. I want to ask you some questions about direction of projectile. In all of them, you note from back to front, left to right, and then slightly upward or slightly downward. What would cause a bullet to enter and go slightly upward or slightly downward?
Good question. You know, a lot of things can do that. A ricochet that bounces off the cement, it comes back up, can hit you in the leg, and you'll have a slightly upward wound. And slightly downward could just be the angle of the gun shooting downward at the person, could do that.
If an individual is walking up a grade in the road, therefore getting higher than someone with the weapon, would that cause a bullet to enter and go upward?
It can, yes.
What about if an individual is crouching down?
Crouching down. Well, you know, I guess people crouch in all different kind of ways.
If they're just average ducking, crouching down?
Then your leg is still upright. You know, so if it was gonna go, if the bullet was gonna go upward, it would have to be a ricochet bouncing off the cement and going up into your leg.
So if someone is crouching down and going up a grade in the road, the bullet could enter and go upward without a ricochet.
They were going up a grade in the road, that'd be a pretty steep grade, right? That's possible, sure, yeah.
The two projectiles that you recovered from Mr. Lever's body, what kind of shape were they in?
They're deformed.
Could you tell if any of them were ricochets?
Well, I know the one that struck him in the back was not a ricochet, and you know, the other one that I got out of his leg was so badly deformed, I guess it could have possibly have been one. You know, I can't say with 100% determination, but I can say with a lot of it, 99% determination, it's probably a ricochet.
And doctor, you did this autopsy on October 31st, 2011. Do you have in your notes or in your packet what time the body was delivered to your office?
I have, the body was removed from the scene on the 29th at 13:20 hours. The distance that it traveled was from Daytona Beach, so we're located in Daytona Beach. So 13:20 hours is 20 minutes after 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I would imagine that that trip was probably no more than 20 minutes. So probably 1:40, 1:45 in the afternoon, something along that line.
But we don't have an exact time when it was logged into your office, if it is.
Let's see, if you want to get more specific than that, I can look for it. It's going to take a little while here. I know it's been a long day.
Doctor, while you're looking, if I may ask you another question,
Okay, I can.
would the transportation vehicle make any stops along the way?
Oh, here it is, yeah, it's, nope, that's not it. Sorry, I got explained there. Okay, go ahead.
Would the transportation of Mr. Lever's body, would that vehicle make any stops along the way?
Now, it's a direct route from the scene to our facility.
So they wouldn't have to, it's against protocol to stop for gas or stop for anything, just come right back to your office?
They have to come right back, yes. Unless there's some intervening circumstance. Here we are, okay, arrived at the medical examiner's office, 13:22. So, 22 minutes after 1 in the afternoon.
If it was removed at you told me it was removed at 13:20 and arrived at 13:22.
Right,
So it doesn't seem to work out.
Right, okay, well, I might offer you this.
Okay.
There's a lot of papers to look through here. I never get this question, I never got it at all. Okay, so the investigator left the scene of the crime, of the incident, at 13:17, so 17 minutes after 1 in the afternoon. And then they arrived At 13:22, it's like 5 minutes later, at the medical examiner's office.
Okay, what is the address of your office?
I never get that question either. It's 1360 Indian Lake Road.
What city?
Oh, Daytona Beach.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cross-examination for defendant Ray Greenlaw.
Yes, briefly, Your Honor. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening.
So, projectile, or I guess wound, is that how you refer to it? Is it wound or projectile, that A, B, C, D?
A projectile would cause the wound. So a projectile is what we call the bullet that struck him.
So the wound seat on the toe, direction of travel downward, right?
That's right.
Well, let me start off by just asking you a quick question. All of these downwards, front to back, that sort of thing, that assumes standard anatomical position, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Can you explain to the jury what standard anatomical position means?
Right, the standard anatomical position is the decedent laying down on the table with his arms at his side. Right, so that's the basis where we make all of our measurements from. So all cases are like that. It's a standard position that we put everybody in.
And why is it that you always reference from one standard position? If you could explain that to the jury, please.
Right, we want to reference from one standard position so that if another medical examiner from somewhere else wants to read the report, he could understand my notes, and he could understand that my notes are taken from the standard anatomical position.
And crime scenes are, well, let me ask you, the standard anatomical position is a static position. That's going to be the same no matter what, right? That's a reference point. And so crime scenes are, the world is fluid and changing and moving, correct? And so, is that a yes, Doctor?
Yes, it is. Yes, I agree.
And so